Hello and welcome to our lovely webinar on finance and procurement, which is for Race for Diversity, which is an initiative which is managed by Motorsport UK. For those who aren't aware of what Race for Diversity is, it's a program which aims to inspire and encourage young people in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics from diverse backgrounds and ethnicities. Joining me today, I have Amy, Zain, and Nayan. Myself, I'm Tandy Sabanda. I am a social media manager and motorsport journalist and co-founder of Quickstop F1. So I'm gonna lead for our lovely panelists, Zain, Amy, and Nayan, to introduce themselves. So starting with you, Amy, please.
Hello everyone. I'm Amy Inman. So I currently work at Mercedes AMG HPP, where we provide the power units for Mercedes and our customer teams. I've worked in motorsport now for about 5 years, and my experience and education came through studying accounting and finance at uni and did an industrial placement here at Mercedes. So I've come up through our student recruitment and then worked through various different roles to today where I'm an investment controller. So most of my talk tonight will probably be from the finance perspective.
Lovely. And you, Zain?
Hi everyone, I'm Zane. I also work at Mercedes AMG HVP alongside Amy. I have a bit of a different route to getting there. I also studied accounting and finance at uni and then went on to doing a audit graduate scheme at PwC before now joining Mercedes, where I've been for the past 2 or so years. I've had a bit of a varied kind of role, a bit of a rotation around whilst doing the grad scheme here, and now I'm mainly focused on the accounting and the advanced technology side of our business. So I have a bit more to say from that side.
Very cool, Zain. And you yourself, Nayan?
Hi everyone, I'm Naima. I'm head of commercial partnerships at Motorsport UK. I've had a very, I suppose, a non-linear route into motorsports. I studied cell and molecular biology at university. Realized quite quickly that that wasn't where my passion was, and that sport and motorsport was where my heart was. At which point I suppose I pivoted and started on a route into sport. And I've worked on the commercial side of sport and also motorsport for the last 15 or so years. Very varied, from two-wheel motorsport with the Isle of Man TT to non motorsport with the NFL, and then Formula One, and now Motorsport UK. So lots of different experience, but all on the commercial side of sport, which is probably where I'm best suited to speak about my experiences.
That is brilliant, guys. What a fantastic panel we have today. I would really love to remind everybody who may have just joined that we will answer questions at the end. So please hold off your questions till the very end. We have some great questions to ask today. So I'm going to start because when I first had this conversation with you guys, I did emphasize how I myself am in motorsport. And while I know about finance, I've never found the bridge between procurement and finance within motorsport and how it kind of all comes together. Now, I don't even know what procurement meant until I actually was invited to do this webinar. So I'm going to start with you, Amy. Could you tell me a little about yourself, your background, your current role, and how you found your way into motorsport?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my current role is investment controller. So everything that I see day to day is everything to do with assets in the business. So that can be from the buildings that we sit in to the dynos, which are the test facilities that we would run power units on. So the supply chain and what we see in the procurement process would be everything from initially planning stages of what we're looking at, from short-term to long-term goals of, do we want a new test facility in 5 years' time that can get us that edge on our competitors, to everything from every morning I'm releasing POs to make sure that that little O-ring or screw makes it here on time to get into the power unit for the race weekend. So it's quite a big span, and I'd say actually a lot of the strategic thinking that you don't necessarily see on screen definitely happens within those procurement roles. So those roles that I know that I work with, we tend to call it business support here, but it's all of those other functions you see from IT, facilities, our health and safety department, making sure that our environmental stats or our sustainability is always at the forefront of what we do. Everything to then our purchasing teams, like I said, we'll make sure we get the parts in. So those are all the colleagues I think of when we think of procurement and who actually sits to make sure we get to track for every race. What else were you saying? So my background, I have always studied accounting and finance. I'd say I definitely didn't have motorsport on my radar when I was looking at what career to go down. I think all of my previous experience was in not-for-profit organisations. So I was actually working in charities as my previous experience. And I always wanted to find a career that didn't focus around profit, which is quite hard to say when you're going down the finance route. But I saw the similar link of working in charities to make sure that you get as much as possible with the cost that you have, and then linking that over to if you don't want to strive for profit. Here in a motorsport, we're always striving for innovation, or we say bang for our buck, to make as much out of what we have as possible. So that innovation drive is definitely what pulled me to a career in motorsport.
Brilliant, Amy. And I'm going to pass it over to Zane. Could you tell me more about your role, Zane, and how you found your way into the motorsport world?
Yeah, so like I said, similar to Amy, I studied accounting and finance at uni as well. So kind of always had the finance route on my radar. I think that's more suited to what I enjoy as well. So it's kind of what I wanted. But then naturally, it's a bit of a far-fetched thing to think about motorsport directly from that. Like Amy said, it's most of the time for profit, and businesses have needs for a totally different need to what we'd have in terms of motorsport. And for me, coming out of university, I was kind of looking for those finance, accounting kind of roles, and got my foot in the door there quite early on to do with audit. So very different to what I'm doing now. And then saw this opportunity present itself, and naturally having that kind of drive and interest in motorsport, Formula One, engines, all that kind of stuff, it just straight away appealed to me and kind of something I couldn't say no to. So took that opportunity straight away. And now, 2 years later, I'm here at Mercedes AMG HPP, having completed all my accounting exams, worked through various different roles to where I am now in the accounting team. So kind of working towards our statutory positions on making up our accounts, working through financial audits, dealing with some queries from the FIA where they have kind of like where we've dealt with something. And I think we'll touch on it later, but there is a cost cap in place within the Formula One world. So a lot of myself and Amy's work is towards that and making sure that we kind of go through that quite smoothly and without affecting the business too much.
Very interesting. It seems like you guys are literally the brain box of this call. And I will say, Nyan, so would you say that you were always into motorsport and you always wanted to go that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in motorsport, anything with an engine, definitely. I love tinkering with bikes and cars, etc. So yeah, I've always been focused in and around that area. But in terms of creating a career around it, it wasn't on my radar. As I said, you know, a very non-linear route into sport. But fast realized, and I got a piece of advice which I've always held on to, is if you do something that you love, then you never really work a day in your life. And I got to, I suppose, a point where I was not necessarily enjoying the science route that I'd taken at university. I worked for a year working for the government, diagnosing tuberculosis in animals, and it wasn't where my heart was. So you know, as I said, I changed tactics, moved out quite quickly, or made that decision to divert my course, and then started onto, you know, into a route towards motorsport specifically. I worked for Autosport magazine on the sales and advertising side. You know, learnt the core basics of art of sales and negotiation, and then from there built more of an understanding about the different national levels of motorsport, working with British touring cars, Formula Ford at the time, and then, you know, working with different teams, drivers, sponsors, etc. And that's kind of how my career started on its pathway. And I realized that working in the commercial side with sponsorship and partnerships was where my passion was.
Amazing. Now, I speak on behalf, I'm sure, of anyone who's kind of listening at the moment, where many people think of drivers and engineers when it comes to motorsport. Can you explain why finance and commercial functions are just as critical for a team success, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, like I touched on with procurement, if you think of you want to test some parts, it takes a full team of supply chain to get that design confirmed, approved by your different stakeholders in the business, for then your purchasing and logistics teams to get those into the business and secure. You then have your quality team making sure they're okay to get it all the way to build, or to your engineers. So there's a full team just to get those parts in the door to then make all of these tests possible. And I think that's the same from a finance side, strategically, of even what R&D projects your engineers are going to focus on is all started with now with cost cap, for example, putting us at the forefront of all of those decisions before they get down. But I'd say my main thing there is all of the competitiveness that you would expect in motorsport actually happens at every single level of the business. We have all of our own targets that we're trying to get, and even in a finance team, we've said a few times in different company meetings of imagine your exact role in one of your competitors' teams and what that person's doing, and making sure you can be the best you can be for you and your team to just I don't know how else to say it, but we're all very competitive here.
And Zane, would you say you feel the heat of competitiveness in your role as well?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Amy's hit the nail on the head. It's kind of like she said, we have every competitor, so every team that we're competing against, we just will have that kind of drive to be better than them, whether it's somehow we're dealing with something in a different way, or we're processing it differently, or maybe a faster system, whatever it might be. As much as on the track, it could be every little tenth of a second. It's kind of behind the scenes. It's every little process that we can kind of streamline or make a bit more efficient for our business. We will try and do that as much as possible. So I think absolutely we're all competitive in our own ways, and we'll try and do whatever we can to push the business forward at every opportunity.
And Nyan, Motorsport UK, tell me what that's like.
So yeah, I mean, Motorsport UK is the governing body of motorsport. So, like you would have the FA in football or the RFU in rugby, Motorsport UK is the governing body. We look after all areas of racing. So, from the racing driver perspective, everyone who wants to race, whether it be in go-karts, karting, rally, you all have to apply for a race license. But then also we manage the other aspects. We promote karting, the British Kart Championship, the British F4 Championship, the British Rally Championship as well. We also run initiatives like Race for Diversity, Girls on Track. We also have a growing esports community, regulating and building esports as an entry point for motorsport, similar to, I suppose, previously it was karting, but now, recognizing that a younger generation are more digitally native, so therefore moving towards how we utilize esports as a pathway and an entry point. And from my commercial role, I oversee the commercial aspects of involvement across all those different touch points.
That is truly amazing, guys. You guys are both all very inspiring. Your jobs sound very interesting. So now, as a young person, I'm pretty sure our audience is wondering, how do we get into this? So I'd love to ask you, are there any specific qualifications, internships, or experiences that kind of helped you stand out when you guys were starting out?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely things that you can aim for. And I think the main, so for a bit of reference, I help with our recruitment processes for a lot of our students. So that's getting placements in, whether that be during their university degrees or then as graduates afterwards. And I'd say we prioritize looking at the soft skills rather than technical. So if you think of whether they're your favorite or the things that you think of are closest aligned with motorsport. For example, we all know it's a very fast-paced environment, and link that to where you think you can get it or how you think you can hone in all those skills. So experiences, if we're saying fast-paced environment, for example, you want to be able to prove that you can make decisions quickly, you can follow logical processes under time pressure. And when you're at the start of your career, even if you link that back to, I used to work in hospitality, and I can't think of anything more stressful than working at a very busy bar or trying to deal with 5 different customers coming at you all at the same time. So I think my advice there is link all of those soft skills back to its core and what that means for you. Even working teamwork, I would almost always think of examples of how you can prove it. If you have a quality that you want to be able to show and evidence, try and back that up with some experiences. So we definitely don't look for, I expect you to have done an internship in motorsport, because we always know how hard that is, to be able to actually then get a role with us. But it's how you can prove those transferable skills in yourself, I think.
That's really true. And Zane?
I think, yeah, mirroring kind of what Amy said, is that there's only so much experience you can have, particularly at younger levels or coming out of university. I don't think anybody in any industry would expect somebody to have 5 years of experience, understand the business fully, particularly in such a fast-paced industry such as motorsport. So I think naturally having that drive, the interest to see how the business works, why certain things are done a certain way, and kind of targets and challenges we'd have is massively beneficial. But alongside that, again, the soft skills, I think communication in particular, working within finance, we deal with all sorts of different people. So they could have a finance background and understand stuff a little better, or they could be totally different, have that engineering background and want stuff worded a certain way, or just not have the same kind of language. So kind of tailoring our approach to them. And again, that kind of skill can be broadened out to any kind of industry, and tailoring your approach to different individuals at different levels, or even to family members, friends, whoever it might be, has different interests. I think that communication aspect is very important and can massively help, especially when coming across initially in whether it's job interview stages or kind of application processes. Kind of how you tailor yourself and attack a problem, I think massively makes a difference and is helpful.
Thank you. And Nyan, am I correct in saying you previously worked for a magazine?
Yes, yes. So I worked for Autosport magazine, which was at the time the motorsport Bible for across motorsport, but all racing really. It was a weekly magazine, covered Formula One, but rally as well, all areas of national and global sport or global motorsport really. And I worked across the advertising side because like with everything, everything takes money to run. So the advertising offset the cost of running the magazine itself. And in that process, I worked with a lot of businesses that were, I suppose, endemic to motorsport, race teams, but also engineering teams supplying to different levels of motorsport, whether it be gearboxes or tire manufacturers, etc. So lots of different areas and touch points of businesses that work in and around motorsport, not just your conventional teams, etc.
Yeah, I definitely pick up on that and say, as a journalist myself, and having worked as Race for Diversity social media manager, I think journalism in this day and age can be translated to social media as well. So I'd say even any social media skills can also put you in a place of motorsport, right?
Definitely, and I think now having a better understanding of how the digital landscape is built, how the social media verse plays into even sponsorship, and also how you can leverage an audience to benefit commercial conversations. It's utilizing a platform. We see it with influencers in social media as well. There's a whole new diverse entry point into motorsport, where take for example the work you do, and how you report on what's going on in motorsport can be done conventionally through a magazine, but also through using digital platforms across social media.
Yeah, wow, yeah. Now, Amy, do you think there are any soft skills that you use day to day that are very much essential in your job? Like you cannot come in, you cannot wake up in the morning and forget these essential skills for your role.
Yeah, absolutely. The main one that comes to mind is ability to just pack up and change everything you're doing. So you can come to work with a really great plan of how you're going to spend your 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, and you can get about 10 minutes in and it just doesn't matter. So as a business support function, I think the main thing is business support is in the name for us. We're supporting our stakeholders. We're always working to the needs of other people and looking to collaborate with them. So a lot of my priorities will actually be enabling those stakeholders to do the best in their job or succeed at one of their tasks, because in return it gives me information and data that I can then use to help forecast in the future. So actually bending what you want to do around others, and being as dynamic as possible is something that I see 24/7 in my role. I think other than that, it's a being your willingness to learn, I think, is another big one, and the attitude that you bring forward. Definitely the most successful people here are the ones that can see the positive in all of the stressful situations. And I'd rather than saying be prepared to work in stressful situations and make those decisions, it's actually just see the benefits of it and what can come out of it, and making sure that you're always striving for the next goal and seeing the next opportunity behind what you're working on, because that keeps the fun in it and that makes you enjoy what you do every day. That, like Nyan said, like you're hardly working if you enjoy what you do. I don't think that's quite what you said, but I tried to. Close enough.
I totally agree, Zane. And now, Zane, obviously, apart from wearing really cool Tommy Hill merch all the time, what are some skills that you find you have to wake up and put on every day for your fast-paced role?
I think, like I touched on, is the communication, teamwork aspect as well. Is at the end of the day, Amy kind of said there's multiple different levels to procurement and business support, and kind of working with each one well. So I think there might be some days where somebody's having a bad day, or you need to work with a different team that you haven't worked with before. That might crop up something different, a new problem. Kind of having that adaptability and that willingness to work with everyone around you to get essentially everyone's in the business has that one goal of getting this thing done, getting our power units out, the team success. So kind of keeping that at the forefront and working well within the team, whether it's the finance one, health and safety, purchasing, kind of broadening our horizons, I guess, and just keeping the ship sailing as smooth as possible, I think is a big one to just help the entire business kind of keep going the right direction, pick up on those efficiencies, see where we can improve, and all of us strive together in the right direction, I think.
Do you think qualifications matter over experience then?
I think they kind of go hand in hand, but I think the experience brings on things like the soft skills that we mentioned more. So I think qualifications kind of, to an extent in our role, will go so far. But it's if you could be the most qualified person in the world, but if you can't talk or communicate your ideas properly to different stakeholders or share your opinions or work well with others, it's kind of the qualification has got you so far, but you're limited by other factors. So I think having that experience of working through those stressful situations, those different difficult moments, the new challenges, builds you up to have build on those communication skills, the team working, the adaptability, that then progresses you to that next level. So I think they are both equally important, but they do go hand in hand. You build on one with the other, I think, and that kind of completes you in a well-rounded person.
Nyan, would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think to echo what both Amy and Zane have said. I think being adaptable is a key element. In a professional working environment in general. I think your willingness to learn is vital, but then also, from my perspective, it's listening, speaking to different clients, different stakeholders, whether internally within your own business, but then also listening to external problems, pain points that a client may have, or a potential brand or sponsor. It's being able to understand what those pain points are, listening specifically to those areas, and then analyzing how you can provide a solution. So it's you can't go in very rigid with a concept and an idea of this is what I want to talk about. This is what I want to address. You've got to, I suppose, adapt to how the client, the internal stakeholders are, poising their concerns, their issues, etc., and address and be adaptable to address those situations.
Now, I'm interested in kind of knowing that whole chameleon feel of things. Like, would you say networking is a key thing? And did any of you guys ever have a mentor?
So I haven't personally had a mentor, but I've definitely been an advocate for expanding our reach of them in the business. So I've really seen it expand out to help our incoming students and people coming in various different schemes to HPP. But in terms of networking, I think all you can do, it's a bit like listening and learning to everything around you. The more you can absorb from your environment, I think the better off you are in not only learning from your own experience, but from others. So I would say networking while I was still going through education really helped me understand not just what I do want to do, but also what I don't. I think that's also something very worthwhile to take from experiences, even if yourself, if you've ended up going for a job and you thought this would be exactly what you wanted and you've come away with a negative experience, for example, it's actually been more constructive about that and thinking, well, that's now taught me that I need to look in a different direction, or I need to spend less time here and focus more so in other places. So I think networking can definitely accelerate you along that journey and help you understand the experiences that you haven't maybe had exposure to or haven't had time to get to just yet.
Zane, did you have a mentor at all?
I didn't really have a mentor, to be honest with you. I think going through university for myself, I didn't really touch on the networking mentor side as much as I should have. Looking back in hindsight, it was kind of a thought in my head where when it comes to it later on, once I graduated, kind of starting the job search a little more, was when I would kind of kickstart that a bit more. And I think for me, studying through COVID, etc., it kind of threw everything sideways and that was left behind. Whereas now looking back, I think building my network a bit earlier, I see the benefits of it. And even maybe, like you said, touching on mentors, I think having a mentor, having someone to kind of relate to or just communicate with, and having someone that you feel comfortable enough with to have those conversations would kind of help. I think as I progressed through my career after university, I kind of found people who, whether they had similar interests, were in a similar position, or just had the experience of it beforehand, just having conversations with them, you pick up quite a lot that you can relate to yourself or think, okay, I'll keep that in mind for next time I try and maybe apply for a different job or go for a promotion or whatever it might be, you build upon their knowledge. So I think it's very important building that network, building the relationship with people, not just around you internally in your job, but cast a wider net as possible and kind of learning from others that have done well, that have achieved success can only really benefit you. It's not going to harm you in any way. So asking those questions and building that network is very important.
And Nyan, I feel like your CV is so large. Do you still network today? And would you be open to mentoring yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I do in terms of networking. Yes, it's something that I don't think you can ever stop doing. I think it's definitely a lot easier now with LinkedIn, with social media, the way it works as well. There are great opportunities to tap into, to build that network, to draw on peers from other sports, other areas, coming up even where I mean, sport wasn't on my radar specifically when I was at university. I played sport, I played rugby, but I didn't, I didn't utilize a network or didn't create a network in that regard when I was at university. So, maybe I missed something at that point. LinkedIn didn't really exist when I was in uni either. So, Facebook had only just started, taking hold. So, I'm really showing my age, I suppose. But, tapping into it as early as possible, having that I suppose diversity in terms of your direction, being open to utilize experiences, as I said, from other sports. You might be motorsport orientated, but there's definitely more to learn from other sports as well. look at the Premier League, look at football, and how it works in, from a commercial landscape, from a sporting perspective. Just because you might be you might have a focus in motorsport, be open-minded in how you get to that end goal, because there are other opportunities in other areas as well that can then bring you back to where your passion is.
Brilliant. Now, I have two more questions before I go to the sent in questions previously and then the audience's questions. So I do encourage anybody who's got any questions to drop them in the Q&A section. So my first question is, are there any trends that you guys have seen in your kind of your industry that might affect finance roles in the future?
Oh, interesting. I think with us, specifically in Formula One, the cost cap is probably one of the biggest trends in trying to understand where we're going as a company, which would change any directions for us, just where finance is becoming more at the forefront of the conversations we're having than ever before. In terms of helping us along that journey, it's definitely automation, and something that I learned a lot actually when I was at university. People kept using the term big data to me and it just went straight over my head. But now I see that, especially with us trying to prepare for cost cap, the more information we have at our disposal, the closer in the detail we can get and the more exclusions we can make. That means we have more money to spend and we can give our engineers more in terms of their R&D projects. So every penny really does help, and really getting into the data is our answer there. So understanding data transformation, automation, anything in terms of those languages to help bring you forward definitely gives you an edge, and will probably be something that we look at more. So where we currently say financial controller, those analytical roles I think will become a lot more important in finance as well. And we actually see that across the board. So rather than having a data analytics team, for example, we actually try and promote that in every grad that we bring into the department, so everyone's as skilled as possible.
Zane, do you have anything to add to that?
I think basically mirroring exactly what Amy said, working in the same business, it's exactly the same thing where the cost cap is such a big addition that's been brought in the past couple of years that we've learned so much for having this extra challenge of adhering to, and kind of like Amy said, it's emphasized our position within the business, whereas before finance was kind of a backdoor activity that we're just going along, tick the boxes, just kind of stay out of the way as much as possible. Now it's a case of the engineering team, the stakeholders, the senior leadership all kind of consider the effects of cost cap for their own decisions, and will touch base a lot more with finance. I think that's helped us see my team grow quite a bit as well. So we've had, myself included, grads that have come in not purely for cost cap reasons, but to help make that process as smooth and efficient as possible. And I think that is the biggest direction that I've seen, is building up those efficiencies, whether it be, like Amy said, through big data, or it be through automation processes, checking through work a lot quicker, a lot more thoroughly, and also just building that in beforehand. So we have like audit step checks that catches any issues, catches anything that seems maybe a bit rogue that we want to investigate a bit further before it gets to a stage where, okay, tomorrow's cost cap submission and we have a list of 10 problems. We're trying to get ahead as much as possible, kind of complete the work that we do in as efficient a way as possible. And if that means working with internal teams better as well, we can kind of build that in as early as possible. So I think rather than having a role where it's just we oversee one area, now it's kind of a wider net of we'll use what we've learned from other areas to be as efficient as possible, to have as kind of rigorous reporting as possible, and be on top of everything in that regard.
Nayan?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I suppose, how I approach different things, I think for me, it's a case of, I suppose, looking at, in terms of technology, and also how we, I mean, there is definitely AI is a key area of interest, and I think we can utilize it in very, in different ways. From a marketing and commercial brand perspective, I think there are really interesting ways to use AI to build a brand association with, whether it be voice recognition and video content creation around motorsport and brand opportunities. So I think it's working with brands and partners who want to push the boundaries of their association within the sport, how they can grow that, I suppose, use the newest techniques, use the newest communication opportunities to leverage their partnership within motorsport. So I don't necessarily utilize technology in my role, but I suppose, incentivizing and opening or helping brands and partners utilize the technology to build their association, and create a narrative around their association with motorsport. So how they choose to use it, whether it is big data, whether it is, video content or conversational media, used to powered by AI, are all different ways that can be utilized.
Now, very quickly before I go to the audience's questions, could you give me a really cool project that you guys have worked on that you're really proud of in your career so far?
Yeah, so a few years ago when I was working in F1, we had a project in our advanced technology department where we actually took the Formula One engine and made it into a road legal hypercar, which had never been done before, probably because it's actually quite hard when we realized to actually get it done. But it was our AMG One hypercar, and as the financial controller on the project, I had to see the steep learning curve, I would say, of going from producing just enough power units for our 2 drivers per team per season to actually creating a production line of 300 power units in the space of 2 years. So getting through that process, the learning curves, the manufacturing processes, having all of the stakeholders come together for probably the first time, because this was before cost cap, where we actually had to tell engineers they had a budget to work to. So overall, the project was incredible from a finance side for me.
Wow. And Zane?
I think I've had a lot less experience than Amy has on the project one side of things. I still have worked towards that, having been here for a lot less time and kind of contribute towards it. But I think for me, the main thing I've seen from starting is the implementation of cost cap and the H engine, as we call it, which is next generation coming in next year, and kind of seeing how the business has changed, I guess, and driving that to make it as efficient as possible, make sure everyone is on top of everything. I think it's been very interesting and quite a different experience to what I expected coming in. As much as I knew about the cost cap, I didn't really expect it to be a kind of in and out kind of approach that, oh yeah, we need to differentiate between them totally, and kind of the level that some of it goes to. I think having seen that and being part of the team that's implementing that and the changes across the business and noticing new areas that, oh, maybe we could do this differently, or maybe we could apply a different approach there to have that extra exclusion has been very interesting and kind of an unexpected change before I came into the role. And now that I'm here, kind of without even thinking, it's at the forefront of my mind and has shown me how I've, I guess, been molded throughout my time at HVP.
Amazing. And Nayan?
I mean, there are quite a few different things that I'm really proud of or having worked on. I think one thing that stands out is in a different role, working in motorbike racing with an event called the Isle of Man TT. I had the opportunity to lead and develop the opportunity to create a next generation, I suppose, next generation computer game based around the Isle of Man TT event. And worked with game developers to create that game on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, something that hadn't been done since PlayStation 1. And obviously this game was being released on PlayStation 4. So there was a big gap in development time, and obviously bringing in the newest mapping techniques to create the Isle of Man TT racing game was something really special, and something that's being utilized by competitors now to learn the racing lines that they utilize in the event itself, which is imperative for the nature of the event.
That's so cool. So I do have a question from our audience, which was sent in a few days ago. So the first question is there any chance for someone in their 30s? Sometimes I feel I'm too late. Amy.
Yes, absolutely. There's always an opportunity. I think, like we said, we look for experience and values of a person and what they can bring to a team more than anything. I touched on competitiveness, but it's actually insane in our team. So those kind of things we look for. For example, in finance, I think we see such a high correlation between successful candidates joining our team and actually their interest in competitive sports outside of work and extracurriculars. So I think there's so many factors like that that are really high correlations to who is successful in our team, and that definitely doesn't start with looking for people only at the start of their careers or early opportunities. It definitely expands to making sure we have the best person in the role.
And Zane, were you ever afraid to break into motorsport? If so, what advice would you give to those currently scared to do so?
I don't think particularly I was. I think it's a case of whatever new industry you're going to go into, you're going to kind of have gaps in your knowledge. You're not going to have that experience. So I think I kind of just treated it as a new industry rather than thinking of it as motorsport in particular. So for me, coming out of university, I didn't really have any kind of specialism in any direction. So wherever I went, it was kind of going to be new to me, a new area to pick up, a new thing to learn. And rather than kind of be scared of it and think this might be a bit daunting, I wanted to dive headfirst and just be like a sponge and just absorb everything I could. So I think that has always been my approach rather than thinking this could kind of overwhelm me, see the opposite side and think I have all these new aspects I could learn about. And with motorsport, the added benefit is it's something I'm naturally interested in. So kind of seeing the side we see on TV with every few weeks as a race weekend, kind of having the debriefs, going to the practice sessions, the qualifying, kind of watching them myself, and then seeing the opposite side of that at the factory and all the work that goes into it and what I can do and how my work corresponds to that was quite interesting and I guess was a big driving factor for me to apply to the role anyway. And as much as it is daunting to think that I am part of this team now and people rely on me, I kind of use that to drive me instead and think, yeah, I am part of this team. I, as much as I might not be driving the car, I am part of this team. I'm doing a large part of the process, and everything that I do, Amy does, everyone else at HVP does, ultimately brings our car together, helps our team go forward, and wins us hopefully a lot more championships.
Yeah, fantastic. And Nyan, what would you say for somebody who feels like there is a bit of a dry spell at the moment for opportunities? How do you keep them motivated?
I mean, I think motivation obviously comes from within, but at the same time, I suppose going back to what we've talked about previously is being adaptable. Take the pressure off yourself in terms of what the end goal is. Look at where the opportunities are, but be adaptable to how you may get to your end point. If the end goal is to work in Formula One, the pathway is not to start at Formula One. There are huge amounts of opportunities in motorsport that don't include Formula One, Formula E, the World Endurance Championship, World Rally Championship. You can work in motorsport whilst not necessarily, and being adaptable to your pathway. And at which point you can then reach the end goal, which could be working, for Mercedes and in Formula One, and winning a constructors world championship. But the pathway is long, and there are different routes to succeed.
Brilliant. And now I'm going to take some questions from our audience. So Amir, sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong, has said, how did you know that fitting your careers within motorsport/F1 was right for you? And how do you lose the joy of the hobby because it becomes work?
I would say the first thing you need to do to make sure you're in the right space is actually just confirm it's the role you're after and not just motorsport. So if you want to work in motorsport and you're thinking that getting through finance and business support function is the first step of getting there, I don't always necessarily think that's the best angle to take. So I would say get the basics right and confirm that working in finance, working with data, staring at budgets all day isn't going to be mind-numbingly boring to you, for example, because getting those basics and what's going to be your everyday is important. So I think that's the first step of making sure it's the right thing for you. And then from that point onwards, it is your day to day, and it being in motorsport only makes it more exciting and only puts it on the edge or brings in those hobbies and things that you care about on top of that, and they add value, but it's definitely not the core of what you do. So I think it's making sure that you're not dependent on the label of motorsport, but actually you're really happy with the role that you're doing to start with. And then from there, because you enjoy what you do, I've never felt like it takes away from the hobby, and I definitely don't watch F1 less. I watch it more, and you're interested in everything because you're working towards those outcomes and you want to see it there. So I haven't had a problem with losing the love, I'd say.
Zane?
Yeah, mirroring exactly kind of what Amy said in terms of the love for the sport is definitely still there, without a doubt. It's, if anything, it's driven even more now. And I think like when there's race weekends, we'll obviously see how the race goes while watching it, and then think on Monday we'll have a debrief and see if there's anything in particular that happens or anything exciting. We'll then have a whole company-wide meeting, and you kind of look forward to that to see kind of almost insider information, I guess, and think, oh, okay, I know why that happened. Sky Sports might not know, people watching might not, but I'm part of the team that understand and know what's happened. And I think even little things like that drive my passion for it even more and make it even more interesting. So I think without a doubt, the passion doesn't really ever go away. The love for the sport doesn't at all. In terms of fitting motorsport into my career path and knowing if it was right, I think ultimately any whatever industry you want to go into, you won't know if it's right before you're kind of through the door. I think naturally having the interest in it, having kind of a background drive massively helps. And that was the main thing for me. Was I knew I wanted to be in finance. I kind of, weird as it sounds, I enjoy sitting there messing around in Excel all day, staring at a spreadsheet like Amy mentioned. But then thinking about the industry itself is something that I love and enjoy, and kind of relating what I'm going to learn or what I have learned to what I already had in my head with Formula One engines, etc., is kind of nice to see that tangible link. Whereas for me personally, if it was a totally different industry, like, I don't know, like the radio or something that I just don't use all that much, and trying to link that back would be a lot more difficult for me. So I think the role comes first and then the industry, but they both go hand in hand and helps me kind of keep the level of enjoyment, I think.
I love it. And Nayan?
Yeah, I think for me, it's one of these situations where there is, huge amounts of opportunity, but at the same time, it's just being, I suppose, having that mindset, whether, in terms of a hobby, I kind of step outside of that, and I don't really look at it as, an interest in Formula One perspective per se. It's more a case of just enjoying the commercial elements that fit into the sport itself, and then, being, no matter the industry that you're working in, it's how you make an impact or an influence on that role, on the sport itself. It hasn't taken away my interest, but only added to it. But and it's, I suppose the two are exclusive of each other, really, because one area I'm focused on what I can do to contribute, and the other area is just my own hobby and enjoyment.
That's great. Now we have a question from Katie, who said, how would you recommend moving from commercial in one industry, currently working in construction, to motorsport commercial roles?
I mean, do you want me to jump on that?
Yeah.
Because no, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, there's huge transferable skills that would work from one industry into another, and especially in motorsport. And again, as I've said previously, I think being adaptable is a key element to that. I think that there's a huge amount of transferable skills that you can apply. Then, also from a commercial perspective, there are huge levels. There are different layers to the commercial role. Whether it be the new business side in terms of bringing in new brands and sponsors into a team, into a rights holder, but then there's also the partnership management side where you're looking after a brand and sponsor who are already involved, helping them activate and leverage their association with the sport or the team. There's also the hospitality side, which is a very commercial element to a team and rights holder as well. Also merchandising, all play into that masthead of commercial, but are all different elements. So it's looking at what you can bring to the table from a commercial perspective, how the role in your current industry applies to maybe those different touch points and how you can impact maybe those different areas. And then utilize those skills that you have to, to best place you in I suppose, that area of commercial sport.
Thank you, Nyan. I think, Amy, did you have anything to add to that, or Zane?
I think Nyan's covered it in terms of how to transfer. I think everything is transferable. I think, like I said at the start, when you try and pinpoint and come back to the root of what you want in motorsport, what those values are, and the more you draw that back into the foundations, the more you realize that everything you can do is transferable. From a business support side, I keep saying business partner, but it is the term that I like to link to, mainly because it's exactly what it says. And working in construction, the build and the construction industry, working in a finance perspective and having to work with those stakeholders, moving financial information into non-financial stakeholders, and that communication element, all of those skills are transferable in the same way they would be in the motorsport industry. So it's really just honing that and confirming that I have no doubt that you already have those skills. It's how you evidence them, and it's how you have the confidence to pluck which ones matter out when it comes to trying to find a role elsewhere.
Thank you, Amy. Zane, would you like to add to that at all?
I think we've kind of everyone's touched base on it beforehand. With
sorry.
the soft skills bits, and that is the main transferable bit. So you build upon that throughout your experience, throughout your education, qualification, whatever it might be. Everything adds to that. So I think those soft skills are at the core, and kind of adapting that to different industries, different roles is the most important part. So I think as long as you build upon that and have that kind of thirst for it and the drive to continue building on it, adapting it to a new role, there's no reason that you kind of should be scared about moving industry. I guess it's just, if anything, should be exciting, a new change. And if it is something you're more interested in, then naturally I think you find yourself a bit more invested and want to dive in headfirst a bit more. But yeah, just kind of having that drive and thirst for it is more important, I'd say.
Thank you very much. And for our final panelists, I'd like to ask if you guys have any final advice before we round up our lovely conversation. No?
Ooh, I would just say follow what you want to do. So if working in commercial, procurement, finance in the motorsport industry is what you want to do, set that as your goal and just keep working towards it. As Nyan said, though, I think one of the best bits of advice here today is just make sure it's the right thing for you and that you are following through in any path that might not be as direct as possible. So that might be your end point, keep working towards it. But if it's working in different industries or working in different career steps along that journey, it's all of those opportunities that actually make it more fun and more enjoyable in the long term.
That's lovely advice, Amy. And just to round it off, I'd like to thank Race for Diversity and Motorsport UK for making this event possible. I'd obviously love to thank our guest speakers today, Amy, Zane, and Nyan. Wherever you are, if you could give them a round of applause. It's happening somewhere, guys. It's happening somewhere. I'd like to thank our participants for attending. I do know that, these hours are when people want to be eating their dinner, but I hope this hour or so has given you something to think about. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone on this call that our guests are available on LinkedIn and are available to kind of talk you through anything. If you missed out any questions today that you'd like to still ask, they are available on our LinkedIn themselves. Race for Diversity as a community is a large, growing community. We have 200 members thus far, and we are always welcome for new members. It's completely free. Ivelka will drop the link below. It's been added. We also have a Discord, which you can find out great events, information for more events such as this, webinars, etc., just to add to your CV for anything you are interested in. So I do definitely encourage those to follow our Discord, for example. And I would also like to tell you all that there is a quick survey which we would love for you to complete, as it helps us to know what members want in the future, to kind of know if this works for you guys, if it doesn't, and anything you'd like to see kind of coming in. So even if you aren't a member and you think, oh my God, they should be doing this, please add it in into our lovely survey. I'd like to say thank you for everybody for joining us today. I've been Tandy Sabanda, and it's been great to speak to you all. Thank you very much.